Aradia, or the Gospel of the Witches, by Charles G. Leland. Full audiobook created for Quiet Place Archive. Enjoy the listening. If the reader has ever met with the works of the learned folklorist G. Petre, or the articles contributed by Lady Vere de Vere to the Italian Rivista, or that of J. H. Andrews to folklore, he will be aware that there are in Italy great numbers of strige, fortune-tellers or witches, who divine by cards, perform strange ceremonies in which spirits are supposed to be invoked, make and sell amulets, and, in fact, comport themselves generally as their reputed kind are wont to do. Be they black voodoos in America or sorceresses anywhere. But the Italian strega or sorceress is in certain respects a different character from these. In most cases, she comes of a family in which her calling or art has been practiced for many generations. I have no doubt that there are instances in which the ancestry remounts to medieval, Roman, or it may be Etruscan times. The result has naturally been the accumulation in such families of much tradition. But in northern Italy, as its literature indicates, though there has been some slight gathering of fairy tales and popular superstitions by scholars, there has never existed the least interest as regarded the strange lore of the witches, nor any suspicion that it embraced an incredible quantity of old Roman minor myths and legends, such as Ovid has recorded, but of which much escaped him and all other Latin writers. This ignorance was greatly aided by the wizards themselves in making a profound secret of all their traditions, urged thereto by fear of the priests. In fact, the latter all unconsciously actually contributed immensely to the preservation of such lore, since the charm of the forbidden is very great, and witchcraft, like the truffle, grows best and has its raciest flavor when most deeply hidden. However this may be, both priest and wizard are vanishing now with incredible rapidity. It has even struck a French writer that a Franciscan in a railway carriage is a strange anomaly, and a few more years of newspapers and bicycles, heaven knows what it will be when flying machines appear, will probably cause an evanishment of all. However, they die slowly, and even yet there are old people in the Romagna of the north who know the Etruscan names of the 12 gods, and invocations to Bacchus, Jupiter and Venus, Mercury, and the Lares or ancestral spirits. And in the cities are women who prepare strange amulets, over which they mutter spells, all known in the old Roman time, and who can astonish even the learned by their legends of Latin gods, mingled with lore which may be found in Cato or Theocritus. With one of these, I became intimately acquainted in 1886, and have ever since employed her specially to collect among her sisters of the hidden spell in many places all the traditions of the olden time known to them. It is true that I have drawn from other sources, but this woman by long practice has perfectly learned what few understand, or just what I want, and how to extract it from those of her kind. Among other strange relics, she succeeded, after many years, in obtaining the following gospel, which I have in her handwriting. A full account of its nature with many details will be found in an appendix. I do not know definitely whether my informant derived a part of these traditions from written sources or oral narration, but believe it was chiefly the latter. However, there are a few wizards who copy or preserve documents relative to their art. I have not seen my collector since the gospel was sent to me. I hope at some future time to be better informed. For brief explanation, I may say that witchcraft is known to its votaries as la vecchia religione, or the old religion, of which Diana is the goddess, her daughter Aradia, or Herodias, the female messiah, and that this little work sets forth how the latter was born, came down to earth, established witches and witchcraft, and then returned to heaven. With it are given the ceremonies and invocations or incantations to be addressed to Diana and Aradia, the exorcism of Cain, and the spells of the Holy Stone, Rue, and Verbena, constituting, as the text declares, the regular church service, so to speak, which is to be chanted or pronounced at the witch meetings. There are also included the very curious incantations or benedictions of the honey, meal, and salt, or cakes of the witch supper, which is curiously classical and evidently a relic of the Roman mysteries. The work could have been extended ad infinitum by adding to it the ceremonies and incantations which actually form a part of the scripture of witchcraft. But as these are nearly all, or at least in great number, to be found in my works entitled Etruscan Roman Remains and Legends of Florence, I have hesitated to compile such a volume, before ascertaining whether there is a sufficiently large number of the public who would buy such a work. Since writing the foregoing, I have met with and read a very clever and entertaining work entitled Il Romanzo dei Settimani, G. Cavagnari, 1889, in which the author, in the form of a novel, vividly depicts the manners, habits of thought, and especially the nature of witchcraft, and the many superstitions current among the peasants in Lombardy. Unfortunately, notwithstanding his extensive knowledge of the subject, it never seems to have once occurred to the narrator that these traditions were anything but noxious nonsense or abominably unchristian folly. That there exists in them marvelous relics of ancient mythology and valuable folklore, which is the very corcordium of history, is as uncared for by him as it would be by a common Zaccolone or tramping Franciscan. One would think it might have been suspected by a man who knew that a witch really endeavored to kill 7 people as a ceremony or rite, in order to get the secret of endless wealth, that such a sorceress must have had a store of wondrous legends. But of all this there is no trace, and it is very evident that nothing could be further from his mind than that there was anything interesting from a higher or more genial point of view in it all. His book, in fine, belongs to the very great number of those written on ghosts and superstition, since the latter has fallen into discredit, in which the authors indulge in much satirical and very safe, but cheap ridicule of what to them is merely vulgar and false. Like Sir Charles Coldstream, they have peeped into the crater of Vesuvius after it had ceased to erupt, and found nothing in it. But there was something in it once, and the man of science, which Sir Charles was not, still finds a great deal in the remains, and the antiquarian a Pompeii or a Herculaneum. 'Tis said there are still 7 buried cities to unearth. I have done what little, it is really very little, I could, to disinter something from the dead volcano of Italian sorcery. If this be the manner in which Italian witchcraft is treated by the most intelligent writer who has depicted it, it will not be deemed remarkable that there are few indeed who will care whether there is a veritable gospel of witches, apparently of extreme antiquity, embodying the belief in a strange counter-religion which has held its own from prehistoric time to the present day. Witchcraft is all rubbish, or something worse, said old writers, and therefore all books about it are nothing better. I sincerely trust, however, that these pages may fall into the hands of at least a few who will think better of them. I should, however, in justice to those who do care to explore dark and bewildering paths, explain clearly that witch lore is hidden with most scrupulous care from all save a very few in Italy, just as it is among the Chipway Metas or the Black Voodoo. In the novel To the Life of Endamone, an aspirant is represented as living with a witch and acquiring or picking up with pain, scrap by scrap, her spells and incantations, giving years to it. So my friend the late M. Dragomanov told me how a certain man in Hungary, having learned that he had collected many spells, which were indeed subsequently published in folklore journals, stole into the scholar's room and surreptitiously copied them, so that the next year when Dragomanov returned, he found the thief in full practice as a blooming magician. Truly he had not got many incantations, only a dozen or so, but a very little will go a great way in the business, and I venture to say there is perhaps hardly a single witch in Italy who knows as many as I have published, mine having been assiduously collected from many, far and wide. Everything of the kind which is written is, moreover, often destroyed with scrupulous care by priests or penitents, or the vast number who have a superstitious fear of even being in the same house with such documents, so that I regard the rescue of the Vangelo as something which is to say the least remarkable. This is the Gospel Vangelo of the witches. Diana greatly loved her brother Lucifer, the god of the sun and of the moon, the god of light splendor, who was so proud of his beauty, and who for his pride was driven from paradise. Diana had by her brother a daughter, to whom they gave the name of Aradia, i.e., Herodias. In those days there were on earth many rich and many poor. The rich made slaves of all the poor. In those days were many slaves who were cruelly treated, in every palace tortures, in every castle prisoners. Many slaves escaped. They fled to the country, thus they became thieves and evil folk. Instead of sleeping by night, they plotted escape and robbed their masters, and then slew them. So they dwelt in the mountains and forests as robbers and assassins, all to avoid slavery. Diana said one day to her daughter Aradia, I viro citu se uno spirito. Ma tu sei nata per essere ancora. Mortal e tu devi andare. Solitera e fer de maestra. Adon e a umini ci avrana. Volontà di imper la tua scuola. Ci sarà composta di stregonery. Non devi esser, cum la figlia di Cano. E della razza ci sono divenuti. Celerati infami, a causa dei maltrattamenti. Cum Giude e zingari. Tutti ladri e briganti. Tu non divieni. Tu sarai sempre la prima strega. La prima strega, divenuta nel mondo. Tu insegnerai l'art di avvelener. Di avvelener tutti I signori. Di farli morti ni loro palazzi. Di legger il spirito dell'oppressor. E dove si trova un contadino ricco e avaro. Insegnare le strige tu alun. Cum ravener su raccolta. Con tempesta, folgor e balin. Con grandin e vento. Quando un pret ti fara del male. Del male call su benedizani. Tu la fare, sempre un doppio male. Call mio nome di Diana. Regina del Streghe. Quando I nobili, e pret Roman 6 durano. Dov't credir nel padre, figlio. E Maria, rispondit glai sempre. Il vostro Dio padre e Maria. Sono tre diavoli. Il vero Dio padre non e il vostro. Il vostro Dio io sono venuta. Per distrugger la gent cattiva. E la distruggero. Voi altri poveri soffrete anche la fame. E liberato malo e molt fault. Soffrete anche la prigione. Ma però avit una anima. Una anima più buona, e nell'altra. Nell'altra mondo voi starete bene. E glai altri male. Translation. 'Tis true indeed that thou a spirit art. But thou wert born but to become again. Immortal, thou must go to earth below. To be a teacher unto women and men. Who fain would study witchcraft in thy school. Yet like Cain's daughter thou shalt never be. Nor like the race who have become at last. Wicked and infamous from suffering. As are the Jews and wandering Zingari. Who are all thieves and knaves, like unto them. Ye shall not be. And thou shalt be the first of which is known. And thou shalt be the first of all the world. And thou shalt teach the art of poisoning. Of poisoning those who are great lords of all. Yea, thou shalt make them die in their palaces. And thou shalt bind the oppressor's soul with power. And when ye find a peasant who is rich, then ye shall teach the witch, your pupil, how to ruin all his crops with tempests dire, with lightning and with thunder terrible, and the hail and wind. And when a priest shall do you injury, by his benedictions ye shall do to him double the harm, and do it in the name of me, Diana, queen of witches all. And when the priests or the nobility shall say to you that you should put your faith in the Father, Son, and Mary, then reply, your God, the Father, and Maria are three devils. For the true God the Father is not yours. For I have come to sweep away the bad. The men of evil, all will I destroy. Ye who are poor suffer with hunger keen, and toil in wretchedness, and suffer too. Full oft imprisonment, yet with it all. Ye have a soul, and for your sufferings. Ye shall be happy in the other world. But ill the fate of all who do ye wrong. Now when Aradia had been taught to work all witchcraft, how to destroy the evil race of oppressors, she imparted it to her pupils, and said unto them, Quando io sarò partita di questo mondo, qualunque cosa ci avrit by sogna, una volta al mese quando la luna e piena, doft venir in luogo deserto, in una selva tot insieme, e adora lo spirito potent, di mia madre Diana, e caivora, impera la stregonery, ci non la sopra, mia madre l'insegnera, tut cos, sarit liberi della schiavitù, e cosi diverit tutti liberi, Piero Yomini e Don, sarit tutti nudi per fino, ci non sera morta all'ultima, diglia pressari e morto, ferit il giuoco della micola, di benevento, e ferit poi, una sina cosi. Translation. When I shall have departed from this world, whenever ye have need of anything, once in the month, and when the moon is full, ye shall assemble in some desert place, or in a forest altogether join, to adore the potent spirit of your queen, My mother, great Diana, she who fain would learn all sorcery, yet has not one. Its deepest secrets, then my mother will teach her, in truth, all things as yet unknown. And ye shall all be freed from slavery. And so ye shall be free in everything. And as the sign that ye are truly free, ye shall be naked in your rights, both men and women also. This shall last until the last of your oppressors shall be dead. And ye shall make the game of Benevento, extinguishing the lights, and after that shall hold your supper thus. Here follows the supper, of what it must consist, and what shall be said and done to consecrate it to Diana. You shall take meal and salt, honey and water, and make this incantation. Scongiurazione della farina. Scongieroti, o farina. Ci se il corpo nostro, senziditi. Non si potreb viver tucci. Prima di divener la farina. Se stata sotto terra, dove tutti sono nascosti tutti in segreti. Maxinata ci sia emettert al vento. Tu spolveri per l'aria e tini fuggi. Portando conti I ciu segreti. Ma quando grano ser in spighe. In spige bel ci la luciol. Vengino a fardi lum percetu. Passa crescere più bella, altrimenti. Tu non potresti, crescere divener bella. Dunk ant tu appartieni. Alle strigo la fate, perce. La luciola partingona. Al sol. Luciola caporala. Vini cori e vini agara. Medi la briglia e la cavola. Medi la briglia, al figliuolo del re. Vini, cori e portala me. Il figliuol del re ti la sierra ander. Piero voglio ti piglier. Giac si belle lucent. Ti voglio mettersato un bicchiere. E quartardi cala lent. Sotto un bicchiere in stera. Fino ci tutti I segreti. Di questo mondo, e di quell'altro non mi fer. Saper e anche quel del grano. E della farina appena. Questi segreti io sapro. Luciola mia liberati la sera. Quando I segreti della terra io sapro. Tu benedetta ti dirò. Scongiurazione del sale. Scongiuro il sale suona mezzogiorno. In punto in mezzo a un fiume. Entro e quimiro l'acqua. L'acqua e al sol altro non penso. Cia l'acqua e al sol, alloro. La mia mente tutta e rivolta. Altro pensier non ho desidero. Saper la verissima, ci tanto tempo e acute. Ci soffro, vorrei saper il mio avenir. Si cattivo fas, acquai sol. Miglorate il destino mio. The conjuration of meal. I conjure thee, O meal. Who art indeed our body, since without thee we could not live, thou who at first as seed, before becoming flower when in the earth, where all deep secrets hide, and then when ground, didst dance like dust in the wind, and yet meanwhile didst bear with the inflitting, secret strange, and yet erewhile, when thou wert in the ear, even as a golden glittering grain, even then the fireflies came to cast on thee their light, and aid thy growth, because without their help thou couldst not grow, nor beautiful become. Therefore thou dost belong unto the race of witches or fairies, and because the fireflies do belong unto the sun. The queen of the fireflies, hurry apace. Come to me now, as if running a race. Bridle the horse as you hear me now sing. Bridle, O bridle the son of the king. Come in a hurry, and bring him to me. The son of the king will ere long set thee free. And because thou forever art brilliant and fair, under a glass I will keep thee, while there with a lens I will study thy secrets concealed, till all their bright mysteries are fully revealed. Yea, all the wondrous lore perplexed, of this life of our cross and of the next. Thus to all mysteries I shall attain. Yea, even to that at last of the grain. And when this at last I shall truly know, firefly, freely I'll let thee go. When earth's dark secrets are known to me, my blessing at last I will give to thee. Here follows the conjuration of the salt. Conjuration of the salt. I do conjure thee, salt low, here at noon, exactly in the middle of a stream. I take my place and see the water round, likewise the sun, and think of nothing else, while here besides the water and the sun, for all my soul is turned in truth to them. I do indeed desire no other thought. I yearn to learn the very truth of truths, for I have suffered long with the desire to know my future or my coming fate. If good or evil will prevail in it. Water and sun, be gracious unto me. Here follows the conjuration of Cain. Conjuration di Caino. Chuo Caino tu non possa ver. Ne pace e ni benefinoci. Dal sol andate non sara coi pidi. Correndo, le mani battendo. E pregarlo per mi cimi faxia saper. Il mio destino, si cadeva fos. Allora mi te faxia cambire. Si questa grazia mi farit. El'acqua allo splendor del sole gardero. E tu caino cala tu bacca mi dur. Il mio destino quale sarà. Si questa grazia, o caino non mi fare. Paci bene non avrai. The conjuration of Cain. I conjure thee, O Cain, as thou canst ne'er. Have rest or peace, until thou shalt be freed. From the sun where thou art prisoned, and must go. Beating thy hands, and running fast meanwhile. I pray thee let me know my destiny. And if 'tis evil, change its course for me. If thou wilt grant this grace, I'll see it clear. In the water, in the splendor of the sun. And thou, O Cain, shalt tell by word of mouth. Whatever this my destiny is to be. And unless thou grantest this, mayst thou ne'er know peace or bliss. Then shall follow the conjuration of Diana. Conjuration of Diana. You shall make cakes of meal, wine, salt, and honey in the shape of a crescent or horned moon, and then put them to bake and say, Non quoco ni il pain ni il sale. Non quoco ni il vino ni il meal. Quoco il corpo il sang e all'anima. L'anima di Diana, ci non passa. Averni la pace e ni bene. Passa esser sempre in mezzo alla pin. Fino ci la grazia non mi farà. Ci glilo, ci asta agliala cido di cuor. Si questa grazia, o Diana mi fare. La cena in tua lode in molti la fermo. Mangervimo, beverimo. Ballerimo, salterimo. Si questa grazia, ci ti hociasta. Si questa grazia, tu mi farai. Nel tempo ci balliamo. Il lume spegnerai. Cosi alla l'amor. Librement la fermo. Conjuration of Diana. I do not bake the bread, nor with it salt. Nor do I cook the honey with the wine. I bake the body and the blood and soul. The soul of great Diana, that she shall know neither rest nor peace, and ever be in cruel suffering, till she will grant what I request, what I do most desire. I beg it of her from my very heart. And if the grace be granted, O Diana, in honor of thee I will hold this feast. Feast and drain the goblet deep. We will dance and wildly leap. And if thou grant'st the grace which I require, then when the dance is wildest, all the lamps shall be extinguished and will freely love. And thus shall it be done. All shall sit down to the supper all naked, men and women, and the feast over they shall dance, sing, make music, and then love in the darkness, with all the lights extinguished. For it is the spirit of Diana who extinguishes them, and so they will dance and make music in her praise. And it came to pass that Diana, after her daughter had accomplished her mission or spent her time on earth among the living mortals, recalled her, and gave her the power that when she had been invoked, having done some good deed, she gave her the power to gratify those who had conjured her by granting her or him success in love. To bless or curse with power friends or enemies to do good or evil. To converse with spirits. To find hidden treasures in ancient ruins. To conjure the spirits of priests who died leaving treasures. To understand the voice of the wind. To change water into wine. To divine with cards. To know the secrets of the hand, palmistry. To cure diseases. To make those who are ugly beautiful. To tame wild beasts. Whatever thing should be asked from the spirit of Aradia, that should be granted unto those who merited her favor. And thus must they invoke her. Thus do I seek Aradia, Aradia, Aradia. At midnight I go into a field, and with me I bear water, wine, and salt. I bear water, wine, and salt, and my talisman, and a red small bag which I ever hold in my hand con dentro, sail, with salt in it. With the water and wine I bless myself with devotion to implore a favor from Aradia. Conjuration di Aradia. Aradia mia. Tu ci sei figlia del più pagir. Ci si trova nell'inferno. Ci dal paradiso fu discaxiata. E con una sorella, ti ha creata. Ma tu mater pentita del suo fallo. Ha voluto differdirti uno spirito. Un spirito benigno. E non maligno. Aradia, Aradia, tanto ti prego. Per el amor ci porti a tu mater. Ia el amor ci tanto el ami. Ti prego di farmi la grazia. La grazia ci io ti cido. Si questa grazia mi feri. Tricos mi feri vedir. Surpstricier. Luciola voler. Irana canter. Si questa grazia non mi feri. Desidero tu non possa aver. Aver più pace ini bene. E ci da lontano tu debba scomodarti. Ia mi raccomodarti. Ci ti abri, ci tu possa tornar. Presto al tuo destino. The invocation to Aradia. Aradia, my Aradia. Thou who art daughter unto him who was most evil of all spirits, who of old once reigned in hell when driven away from heaven, who by his sister did thy sire become, but as thy mother did repent her fault, and wish to mate thee to a spirit who should be benevolent and not malevolent. Aradia, Aradia, I implore thee by the love which she did bear for thee, and by the love which I too feel for thee, I pray thee grant the grace which I require. And if this grace be granted, may there be one of three signs distinctly clear to me: the hiss of a serpent, the light of a firefly, the sound of a frog. But if you do refuse this favor, then may you in future know no peace nor joy, and be obliged to seek me from afar, until you come to grant me my desire. In haste, and then thou mayst return again unto thy destiny, therewith, Amen. Diana was the first created before all creation, in her were all things, out of herself the first darkness she divided herself, into darkness and light she was divided. Lucifer, her brother and son, herself and her other half, was the light. And when Diana saw that the light was so beautiful, the light which was her other half, her brother Lucifer, she yearned for it with exceeding great desire. Wishing to receive the light again into her darkness, to swallow it up in rapture, in delight, she trembled with desire. This desire was the dawn. But Lucifer, the light, fled from her, and would not yield to her wishes. He was the light which flies into the most distant parts of heaven, the mouse which flies before the cat. Then Diana went to the fathers of the beginning, to the mothers, the spirits who were before the first spirit, and lamented unto them that she could not prevail with Lucifer. And they praised her for her courage. They told her that to rise she must fall. To become the chief of goddesses, she must become a mortal. And in the ages, in the course of time, when the world was made, Diana went on earth, as did Lucifer who had fallen, and Diana taught magic and sorcery, whence came witches and fairies and goblins, all that is like man, yet not mortal. And it came thus that Diana took the form of a cat. Her brother had a cat whom he loved beyond all creatures, and it slept every night on his bed, a cat beautiful beyond all other creatures, a fairy. He did not know it. Diana prevailed with the cat to change forms with her, so she lay with her brother, and in the darkness assumed her own form, and so by Lucifer became the mother of Aradia. But when in the morning he found that he lay by his sister, and that light had been conquered by darkness, Lucifer was extremely angry. But Diana sang to him a spell, a song of power, and he was silent, the song of the night which soothes to sleep. He could say nothing. So Diana with her wiles of witchcraft so charmed him that he yielded to her love. This was the first fascination. She hummed the song. It was as the buzzing of bees or a top spinning round, a spinning wheel spinning life. She spun the lives of all men. All things were spun from the wheel of Diana. Lucifer turned the wheel. Diana was not known to the witches and spirits, the fairies and elves who dwell in desert place, the goblins, as their mother. She hid herself in humility and was immortal, but by her will she rose again above all. She had such passion for witchcraft, and became so powerful therein, that her greatness could not be hidden. And thus it came to pass one night, at the meeting of all the sorceresses and fairies, she declared that she would darken the heavens and turn all the stars into mice. All those who were present said, "If thou canst do such a strange thing, having risen to such power, thou shalt be our queen." Diana went into the street. She took the bladder of an ox and a piece of witch money, which has an edge like a knife. With such money witches cut the earth from men's foot tracks, and she cut the earth, and with it and many mice she filled the bladder and blew into the bladder till it burst. And there came a great marvel, for the earth which was in the bladder became the round heaven above, and for 3 days there was a great rain, the mice became stars or rain. And having made the heaven and the stars and the rain, Diana became queen of the witches. She was the cat who ruled the star mice, the heaven and the rain. To find a stone with a hole in it is a special sign of the favor of Diana. He who does so shall take it in his hand and repeat the following, having observed the ceremony as enjoined. Sconghi della pietra bucata. Una pietra bucata. El ho trovato. Ni ringrazio il destin. E lo spirito ci su questa via. Mi ha portata. Ci passa esser il mio bene. E la mia buona fortuna. Mi alzo la mattina all'alba. Ia passeggio mi nivo. Nel valle, monti e campi. La fortuna ser carvo. Della ruta e la verbena. Quello sopporta fortuna. Mi lo tengo in seno chiuso. E saperlo nessuno, no la deve. E così sia ci commendo. La verbena far ben per me. Benedica quella strige. Quella fata ci mi segna. Diana fu quella. Ci mi villanat insogno. E mi disse, si tu voir tenor. La cattive person di ti lontano. Devi tenor, sempre ruta con ti. Sempre ruta con ti e verbena. Diana, tu ci sia la regina. Del cielo e della terra e dell'inferno. E sia la protettrice digli infelici. De ladri digli assassini e anche. Di dondi mali, affari si hai conosciuto. Ci non già stato l'indol cattivo. Del person, tu Diana. Diana il hai fatti tutti felici. Una altra volta ti scongiera. Ci tu non abbiani pace ni bene. Tu possa esser sempre in mezzo alla pin. Fino che la grazia ci io ti cida. Non mi fare. Invocation to the Holy Stone. I have found a holy stone upon the ground. O fate, I thank thee for the happy find. Also the Spirit who upon this road hath given it to me. And may it prove to be for my true good and my good fortune. I rise in the morning by the earliest dawn. And I go forth to walk through pleasant vales, all in the mountains or the meadows fair, seeking for luck while onward still I roam, seeking for rue and vervain scented sweet, because they bring good fortune unto all. I keep them safely guarded in my bosom, that none may know it, 'tis a secret thing, and sacred too, and thus I speak the spell. O vervain, ever be a benefit, and may thy blessing be upon the witch, or on the fairy who did give thee to me. It was Diana who did come to me, all in the night in a dream, and said to me, if thou wouldst keep all evil folk afar, then ever keep the vervain and the rue safely beside thee. Great Diana, thou, who art the queen of heaven and of earth, and of the infernal lands, yea, thou who art protectress of all men unfortunate, of thieves and murderers, and of women too, who lead an evil life, and yet hast known that their nature was not evil, thou, Diana, hast still conferred on them some joy in life. Or I may truly at another time so conjure thee that thou shalt have no peace or happiness, for thou shalt ever be in suffering until thou grantest that which I require in strictest faith from thee. The spell or conjuration of the round stone. The finding a round stone, be it great or small, is a good sign, e buono augurio, but it should never be given away, because the receiver will then get the good luck, and some disaster befall the giver. On finding a round stone, raise the eyes to heaven, and throw the stone up 3 times, catching it every time, and say, Spirito del buono augurio. Se venuto in mio soccorso. Credi ni a vivo gran bisogno. Spirito del falatino rosso. Giac se venuto in mio soccorso. Ti prego di non mi abbandonar. Ti prego dentro questa palla d'intra. E nella mia tasca tu possa portare. Così in qualunque mia bisogna. In mio aiuto ti posso chiamare. E di giorno e di notte. Tu non mi possa abbandonar. Si denari di qualcuno avanziro. E non mi vorrà pagar. Tu falatino rosso mi il feri dare. Si questo di non darmeli. See in Testra 2, Romans 6 Andorai. E call to brie. See dorm to disturai. Pani dal leto lacerai. Lefari tanta pora. Chi alaridi andera dormair. Andra ale bishaji waker. E2 nunqua lo seguirai. E2 call to brie, ladura. Kainon paga deliti. Avrano pini guai. Cosi il debiter il giorno oppresso. Omi portera I denari. Omi il mandara. E cosi falatino rosso. Mi farai fellis in mia vita. Percen qualcunc mia bisogna. Verai in mio soccorso. Si cala mia monte sero ederato. Tu spirito del buon augurio mio. Andrai la not delay. Per I capelli la prenderai. E nel letto mio la porterai. E la mattina quando tutti gli spiriti vanno riposer. Tu prima di si entrar. Nella tua pala si porterai. La mia bella nel suo letto. Cosi ti prego falatino. Di entrar in questa mia pala. E di obbedire tutti mia comandi. Ed io ti portero. Sempre nella tasca mia. Chi tu non mi vada via. The Conjuration. Spirit of good omen. Who art come to aid me. Believe I had great need of thee. Spirit of the red goblin. Since thou hast come to aid me in my need. I pray of thee do not abandon me. I beg of thee to enter now this stone. That in my pocket I may carry thee. And so when anything is needed by me. I can call unto thee, be what it may. Do not abandon me by night or day. Should I lend money unto any man, who will not pay when due, I pray of thee. Thou the red goblin, make him pay his debt. And if he will not and is obstinate, go at him with thy cry of brie. And if he sleeps, awake him with a twitch. And pull the covering off and frighten him. And follow him about where'er he goes. So teach him with thy ceaseless brie. That he who obligation e'er forgets shall be in trouble till he pays his debts. And so my debtor on the following day shall either bring the money which he owes, or send it promptly, so I pray of thee. O my red goblin, come unto my aid. Or should I quarrel with her whom I love? Then spirit of good luck, I pray thee go. To her while sleeping, pull her by the hair. And bear her through the night unto my bed. And in the morning, when all spirits go, to their repose do thou, ere thou return'st, into thy stone, carry her home again. And leave her there asleep, therefore, O sprite, I beg thee in this pebble make thy home. Obey in every way all I command. So in my pocket thou shalt ever be. And thou and I will ne'er part company. Scongurazione, al limon appuntato unspill. Sacred to Diana. A lemon stuck full of pins of different colors always brings good fortune. If you receive as a gift a lemon full of pins of divers colors, without any black ones among them, it signifies that your life will be perfectly happy and prosperous and joyful. But if some black pins are among them, you may enjoy good fortune and health, yet mingled with troubles which may be of small account. However, to lessen their influence, you must perform the following ceremony and pronounce this incantation, wherein all is also described. The incantation to Diana. Al punto di mezzanotte. Un limon ho raccolto. Lo raccolto nel giardino. Ho raccolto un limon. Un arancio e un mandarino. Cagliando quest'cose. Cagliando io ho detto. Tu, o regina del sol. Della luna e del stel. Ti chiamo in mio aiuto. E con quanta forza ho a ti scongiura. Ci una grazia tu, mi voglia fare. Tricos ho raccolto nel giardino. Un limon, un arancio. E un mandarino, una. Di quest'cose per mia fortuna. Voglio tener du. Di questi aghetti di mano. E quello ci dovrà servirmi. Per la buona fortuna. Regina del stel. Fa lo rimanere in mia mano. At the instant when the midnight came, I have picked a lemon in the garden. I have picked a lemon, and with it, an orange and a fragrant mandarin. Gathering with care these precious things. And while gathering I said with care, Thou who art queen of the sun and of the moon, and of the stars, lo, here I call to thee. And with what power I conjure thee, to grant to me the favor I implore. 3 things I've gathered in the garden here. A lemon, orange, and a mandarin. I've gathered them to bring good luck to me. 2 of them I do grasp here in my hand. And that which is to serve me for my fate. Queen of the stars. Then make that fruit remain firm in my grasp. Something is here omitted in the MS. I conjecture that the 2 are tossed without seeing them into the air, and if the lemon remains, the ceremony proceeds as follows. This is evident, since in it the incantation is confused with a prose direction how to act. Saying this, one looks up at the sky, and I found the lemon in one hand, and a voice said to me, "Take many pins, and carefully stick them in the lemon, pins of many colors. And as thou wilt have good luck, and if thou desirest to give the lemon to anyone or to a friend, thou shouldst stick in it many pins of varied colors. But if thou wilt that evil befall anyone, put in it black pins. But for this thou must pronounce a different incantation, thus: Dia Diana, a ti scongiuro. E ti chiamo ad alta voce. Ci tu non abbia pace ni bene. Si non vien in mio aiuto. Domani al punto di mezzogiorno. Ti aspetto a quello punto. Un bicchiere di vino portero. E una piccola lente al occhio. E dentro 36 spilli. Spilli neri Roman 6 metero. E tu Diana tutti. I diavoli dell'inferno chiamerai. E in compagnia del sol il mandarai. E tutto il fuoco dell'inferno presodisi. Lo porteranno e diranno forza. Al sol di farmi questo vino bollier. Perché questi spilli passano aroventer. E con questi il limone pentera. Per non dar più pace. E ni bene alla persona. Ci questo limon le presentero. Si questa grazia mi farit. Un segnal mi darit. Dentro 3 giorni. Una cosa voglio vedere. O vento, o acqua, o grandine. Si questo segnal non avrò. Più pace Diana non ti darò. Tanto di giorno ci di not. Sempre ti tormentero. The invocation to Diana. Goddess Diana, I do conjure thee. And with uplifted voice to thee I call. That thou shalt never have content or peace. Until thou comest to give me all thy aid. Therefore tomorrow at the stroke of noon. I'll wait for thee, bearing a cup of wine. Therewith a lens or a small burning glass. And 13 pins I'll put into the charm. Those which I put shall all indeed be black. But thou, Diana, thou wilt place them all. And thou shalt call for me the fiends from hell. Thou'lt send them as companions of the sun. And all the fire infernal of itself. Those fiends shall bring, and bring with it the power. Unto the sun to make this red wine boil. So that these pins by heat may be red hot. And with them I do fill the lemon here. That unto her or him to who 'tis given is. Peace and prosperity shall be unknown. If this grace I gain from thee, give a sign, I pray, to me. Ere the 3rd day shall pass away, let me either hear or see a roaring wind, a rattling rain, or hail a clattering on the plain. Till one of these 3 signs you show. Peace, Diana, thou shalt not know. Answer well the prayer I've sent thee. Or day and night will I torment thee. When a wizard, a worshipper of Diana, one who worships the moon, desires the love of a woman, he can change her into the form of a dog, when she, forgetting who she is and all things besides, will at once come to his house, and there, when by him, take on again her natural form and remain with him. And when it is time for her to depart, she will again become a dog and go home, where she will turn into a girl. And she will remember nothing of what has taken place, or at least but little or mere fragments, which will seem as a confused dream. And she will take the form of a dog because Diana has ever a dog by her side. And this is the spell to be repeated by him who would bring a love to his home. Today is Friday, and I wish to rise very early, not having been able to sleep all night, having seen a very beautiful girl, the daughter of a rich lord, whom I dare not hope to win. Were she poor, I could gain her with money, but as she is rich, I have no hope to do so. Therefore will I conjure Diana to aid me. Scongiurazioni a Diana. Diana, bella Diana. Ci tanto bella e buona sia. E tanto ti e acute piacere. Ti ho fatto. Anche ti di fare all'amore. Dunk spero ci anche in questa cosa. Tu mi voglia aiutare. E si tu vorrà. Tutto tu potre. Si questa grazia mi vorrai fare. Chiamerai tua figlia Aradia. Al letto della bella fanciulla. La mandera Aradia. La fanciulla in una canona convertira. Alla camera mia la mandera. Ma entrata in camera mia. Non sarà più una canona. Ma tornerà una bella fanciulla. Bella cane era prima. E così potro fare all'amore. A mio piacimento. Come mi piacerà. Quando mi sarò divertito. A mi piacer dirò. Per voler della fata Diana. E di sua figlia Aradia. Torna una canona. Come tu eri prima. Invocation to Diana. Diana, beautiful Diana. Who art indeed as good as beautiful. By all the worship I have given thee. And all the joy of love which thou hast known. I do implore thee aid me in my love. What thou wilt 'tis true. Thou canst ever do. And if the grace I seek thou'lt grant to me, then call, I pray, thy daughter Aradia. And send her to the bedside of the girl. And give that girl the likeness of a dog. And make her then come to me in my room. But when she once has entered it, I pray, that she may reassume her human form, as beautiful as ere she was before. And may I then make love to her until our souls with joy are fully satisfied. Then by the aid of the great fairy queen, and of her daughter, fair Aradia, may she be turned into a dog again, and then to human form as once before. Thus it will come to pass that the girl as a dog will return to her home unseen and unsuspected, for thus will it be affected by Aradia, and the girl will think it is all a dream, because she will have been enchanted by Aradia. An invocation or incantation to Diana. The man or woman who, when about to go forth into the town, would fain be free from danger or risk of an accident, or to have good fortune in buying, as, for instance, if a scholar hopes that he may find some rare old book or manuscript for sale very cheaply, or if anyone wishes to buy anything very desirable or to find bargains or rarities. This Scongiure one serves for good health, cheerfulness of heart, and absence of evil or the overcoming enmity. These are words of gold unto the believer. The invocation. Siamo di martiri e buon ora. Mi voglio lever la buona fortuna. Voglio andare e cercare. E call aiuto della bella Diana. La voglio trover prima d'andare. Prima di sortir di casa. Il malacchio mi levero. Contri goxiol dolio. E ti bella Diana io invoco. Ci tu possa mandarmi via. Il malacchio de das a me. E mandala al mio più nemico. Quando il malacchio mi sarà levato. In mezzo alla vilo gittero. Si questa grazia mi fari. Diana bella. Tutti I campanelli. Di mia casa benissionrai. Allora contento di casa mini andro. Perché col ciu aiuto, sarò certo di trover. Buona fortuna, certo di trover. Un bel libro antico. E a buon mercato. Mi lo farai comprare. Tu stessa dal proprietario. Ci avrà il libro. Tini andrai tu stessa. Lo troverai e lo fari. Capitare in mano al padrone. E lo farai capitare. In mano al padrone. E lo farai entrare. Nel cervello ci si di quel libro. Non si disfare la scomunica. La porterà, così questo del libro. Vera disfarsi e col ciuiero. Vera portato alla mia presenza. E a poco mi ti venderà. Aprirsi un manoscritto. In vis di libro, per la vilo getterà. E col ciu, aiuto vera in mia presenza. E potro acquistarlo. Senza nessuna spesa. E così per me. Sarah grand fortuna. To Diana. 'Tis Tuesday now, and at an early hour. I fain would turn good fortune to myself. Firstly at home, and then when I go forth. And with the aid of beautiful Diana. I pray for luck ere I do leave this house. First with 3 drops of oil I do remove all evil influence, and I humbly pray, O beautiful Diana, unto thee, that thou wilt take it all away from me, and send it all to my worst enemy. When the evil fortune is taken from me, I'll cast it out to the middle of the street. And if thou wilt grant me this favor, O beautiful Diana, every bell in my house shall merrily ring. Then well contented, I will go forth to Rome, because I shall be sure that with thy aid, I shall discover ere I return some fine and ancient books, and at a moderate price. And thou shalt find the man, the one who owns the book, and thou thyself wilt go and put it in his mind, inspiring him to know what 'tis that thou wouldst he find, and move him into doing all that thou dost require. Or if a manuscript, written in ancient days, thou'lt gain it all the same, it shall come in thy way, and thus at little cost thou shalt buy what thou wilt, by great Diana's aid. He who would have a good vintage and fine wine should take a horn full of wine, and with this go into the vineyards or farms wherever vines grow, and then drinking from the horn say, Bevo manon bevo il vino, bevo il sang di Diana, ci divino nel sang di Diana, si deve convertir, ian tutlamai vidi, lo spandera, e buona raccolta nuvera, e quando avrò avuto buona raccolta, non sarò ancora fuori di sciagura, perché il vino cattivo mi può venire, perché può nascer l'uva, a luna vecchia, e così il mio vino può sempre andare in malora, ma io bevendo in questo corno e bevendo il sang di Diana col suyud, la mano alla luna nuova io becero, ci la mia uva possa guardare, al momento ci crea l'oculo, alla crescenza dell'uva, e fino alla raccolta, ci possa venire il mio vino buono, e ci si possa mantenere, da prender molti quattrini, e possa entrare la buona fortuna, nel mio vin, e nel mio podri, quando il mio vino penderà, di ander male, il corno prendero, e forte lo suonero, nel punto della mezzanotte, dentro alla mia cantina lo suonero tanto forte, ci tu bella Diana anche molto lontano, tu lo possa sentire, e feinster e port, con gran forza tu possa spalancare, a gran corsa tu mi possa venire, a traver e tu possa salvarmi, il mio vino e tu possa salvermi de gran sciagura, perché si il mio vino a male andera, la miseria mi prenderà, e call tu bella Diana, io sarò salvato. I drink, and yet it is not wine I drink. I drink the blood of Diana, since from wine it has changed into her blood, and spread itself through all my growing vines, whence it will give me good return in wines. Though even if good vintage should be mine, I'll not be free from care, for should it chance that the grape ripens in the waning moon, then all the wine would come to sorrow. But if drinking from this horn I drink the blood of great Diana, by her aid, if I do kiss my hand to the new moon, praying the queen that she will guard my grapes, even from the instant when the bud is born, until it is a ripe and perfect grape, and onward to the vintage, and to the last, until the wine is made, may it be good, and may it so succeed that I from it may draw good profit when at last 'tis sold. So may good fortune come unto my vines, and into all my land where'er it be. But should my vines seem in an evil way, I'll take my horn, and bravely will I blow in the wine vault at midnight, and I'll make such a tremendous and a terrible sound, that thou, Diana fair, however far away thou mayst be, still shalt hear the call, and casting open door or window wide, shalt headlong come upon the rushing wind, and find and save me, that is, save my vines, which will be saving me from dire distress. For should I lose them, I'd be lost myself. But with thy aid, Diana, I'll be saved. The following legend and the spells were given under the name or title of Tana. This was the old Etruscan name for Diana, which is still preserved in the Romagna Toscana. In more than one Italian and French work, I have found some account or tale how a witch charmed a girl to sleep for a lover, but this is the only explanation of the whole ceremony known to me. Tana is a beautiful goddess, and she loved a marvelously handsome youth named Endamone. But her love was crossed by a witch who was her rival, although Endamone did not care for the latter. But the witch resolved to win him, whether he would or not, and with this intent she induced the servant of Endamone to let her pass the night in the latter's room. And when there, she assumed the appearance of Tana, whom he loved, so that he was delighted to behold her, as he thought, and welcomed her with passionate embraces. Yet this gave him into her power, for it enabled her to perform a certain magic spell by clipping a lock of his hair. Then she went home, and taking a piece of sheep's intestine, formed of it a purse, and in this she put that which she had taken, with a red and a black ribbon bound together, with a feather and pepper and salt, and then sang a song. These were the words, a song of witchcraft of the very old time. Conjuration. Ho formato questo sachetto Endamone. E la mia vendetta per l'amor. Se io ti portavo, in onore corrisposta. Una altra tu l'amavi. La bella di Tana tu amavi. E tu non lavre, di passion. Ti struggerai, volonte di faire. Di faire all'amore tu avrai. E non la potrai faire, sempre addormentato restere. Di un sonno citato sentirai. E la tua bella tu vedrai. Ma parler non potrai. Nel veder la tua bella. Volonte di faire all'amore. Vera e non la potrai faire. Come una candela ti struggera. Ti struggerai poco a poco. Come una candela fuoco. Tu non potrai vivere. Tu non potrai stare. Ti sentirai mancare. Chi il tuo cuorito sempre possa stare. E all'amore più non potrai faire. Per l'amor chi io ti ho portato vo. Je convertito in tanto odio. Chi questo Endamone e la mia vendetta. E così sono contenta. This spell, this bag for Endamone I wove. It is my vengeance for the love. For the deep love I had for thee. Which thou wouldst not return to me. But bore it all to Tana's shrine. And Tana never shall be thine. Now every night in agony. By me thou shalt oppressed be. From day to day, from hour to hour. I'll make thee feel the witch's power. With passion thou shalt be tormented. And yet with pleasure ne'er contented. Enwrapped in slumber thou shalt lie. To know that thy beloved is by. And ever dying, never die. Without the power to speak a word. Nor shall her voice by thee be heard. Tormented by love's agony. There shall be no relief for thee. For my strong spell thou canst not break. And from that sleep thou ne'er shalt wake. Little by little thou shalt waste. Like taper by the embers placed. Little by little thou shalt die. Yet ever living, tortured lie. Strong in desire, yet ever weak. Without the power to move or speak. With all the love I had for thee. Shalt thou thyself tormented be. Since all the love I felt of late. I'll make thee feel in burning hate. Forever on thy torture bent. I am revenged and now content. But Tana, who was far more powerful than the witch, though not able to break the spell by which he was compelled to sleep, took from him all pain, he knew her in dreams, and embracing him, she sang this countercharm. The Song of Diana. Endamone, Endamone, Endamone. Per l'amor che mi porti e chi io pure. Ti porto tre, croci su questo letto. Vengo a fare, e tre maroni d'India. Nel tuo letto vengo a passer. E questa finestra, aperta chi la luna. Su il tuo letto risplend. Come risplend il nostro amore. La, e la prego con gran calor. Chi voglia dare sfogo a questo cuor. Chi tanto si amiamo, e si questa grazia. Mi vera fata chiunque, je innamorata. Si mi scongiura. In suo iudo carrero. Endamone, Endamone, Endamone. Soperti io mi metto al lume. Il tuo cuor io dimno. E mi dimno io puri cosi. E cosi tanto farò. Tanto farò e tanto faremo. Chi unity ni veremo. The counter charm. Endamone, Endamone, Endamone. By the love I feel, which I shall ever feel until I die. 3 crosses on thy bed I make. And then 3 wild horse chestnuts take. In that bed the nuts I hide. And then the window open wide. That the full moon may cast her light. Upon a love as fair and bright. And so I pray to her above. To give wild rapture to our love. And cast her fire in either heart. Which wildly loves to never part. And one thing more I beg of thee. If anyone enamored be. And in my aid his love hath placed. Unto his call I'll come in haste. So it came to pass that the fair goddess made love with Endamone as if they had been awake, yet communing in dreams. And so it is to this day, that whoever would make love with him or her who sleeps should have recourse to the beautiful Tana, and so doing there will be success. Once there was, in the very old time in Setardo Alto, a girl of astonishing beauty, and she was betrothed to a young man who was as remarkable for good looks as herself. But though well born and bred, the fortune or misfortunes of war or fate had made them both extremely poor. And if the young lady had one fault, it was her great pride, nor would she willingly be married unless in good style, with luxury and festivity, in a fine garment, with many bridesmaids of rank. And this became to the beautiful Rorasa, for such was her name, such an object of desire that her head was half turned with it, and the other girls of her acquaintance, to say nothing of the many men whom she had refused, mocked her so bitterly, asking her when the fine wedding was to be, with many other jeers and sneers, that at last in a moment of madness she went to the top of a high tower, whence she cast herself. And to make it worse, there was below a terrible ravine, Balza, into which she fell. Yet she took no harm, for as she fell there appeared to her a very beautiful woman, truly not of earth, who took her by the hand and bore her through the air to a safe place. Then all the people round about who saw or heard of this thing cried out, "Lo, a miracle!" And they came and made a great festival, and would fain persuade Rorasa that she had been saved by the Madonna. But the lady who had saved her, coming to her secretly, said, "If thou hast any desire, follow the gospel of Diana, or what is called the gospel of the witches, il Vangelo del Strige, who worship the moon. Si la luna adora. Tutto tu adorai. If thou adorest Luna then, what thou desirest thou shalt obtain." Then the beautiful girl went forth alone by night to the fields, and kneeling on a stone in an old ruin, she worshipped the moon and invoked Diana thus. "Diana, bella Diana. Tu ci della gran caduta. Mi ai beni salvata. Ti prego di farmi, una altra grazia. Di farmi far, un bello sposalizio. Una sposalizio ricco e compagnato. De molt signor. Si questa grazia mi fare. Sempre il Vangelo del Stri. Lo Isiriro. Diana, beautiful Diana. Thou who didst save from a dreadful death. When I did fall into the dark ravine. I pray thee grant me still another grace. Give me one glorious wedding, and with it, full many bridesmaids, beautiful and grand. And if this favor thou wilt grant to me, true to the witches' gospel I will be." When Rorasa awoke in the morning, she found herself in another house, where all was far more magnificent, and having risen, a beautiful maid led her into another room, where she was dressed in a superb wedding garment of white silk with diamonds, for it was her wedding dress indeed. Then there appeared 10 young ladies, all splendidly attired, and with them and many distinguished persons, she went to the church in a carriage. And all the streets were filled with music and people bearing flowers. So she found the bridegroom and was wedded to her heart's desire, 10 times more grandly than she had ever dreamed of. Then, after the ceremony, there was spread a feast at which all the nobility of Setardo were present, and moreover, the whole town, rich and poor, were feasted. When the wedding was finished, the bridesmaids made everyone a magnificent present to the bride. One gave diamonds, another a parchment, written in gold, after which they asked permission to go all together into the sacristy. And there they remained for some hours undisturbed, till the priest sent his chirico to inquire whether they wanted anything. But what was the youth's amazement at beholding, not the 10 bridesmaids, but their 10 images or likenesses in wood and in terracotta, with that of Diana standing on a moon, and they were all so magnificently made and adorned as to be of immense value. Therefore the priest put these images into the church, which is the most ancient in Setardo, and now in many churches you may see the Madonna and the moon, but it is Diana, la di della luna. The name Rorasa seems to indicate the Latin rose the dew, rarer, to bedew, rorolenta, bedewed, in fact, the goddess of the dew. Her great fall and being lifted by Diana suggests the fall of dew by night, and its rising in vapor under the influence of the moon. It is possible that this is a very old Latin mythic tale. The white silk and diamonds indicate the dew. The following story does not belong to the Gospel of the Witches, but I add it as it confirms the fact that the worship of Diana existed for a long time contemporary with Christianity. Its full title in the original MS, which was written out by Madonna, after hearing it from a man who was native of Volterra, is La Pellegrina della Casa al Vento, the female pilgrim of the House of the Wind. It may be added that, as the tale declares, the house in question is still standing. There is a peasant's house at the beginning of the hill or ascent leading to Volterra, and it is called the House of the Wind. Near it there once stood a small place, wherein dwelt a married couple who had but one child, a daughter whom they adored. Truly, if the child had but a headache, they each had a worse attack from fear. Little by little the girl grew older, and all the thought of the mother, who was very devout, was that she should become a nun. But the girl did not like this, and declared that she hoped to be married like others. And when looking from her window one day, she saw and heard the birds singing in the vines, and among the trees all so merrily, she said to her mother that she hoped some day to have a family of little birds of her own, singing round her in a cheerful nest. At which the mother was so angry that she gave her daughter a cuff. And the young lady wept, but replied with spirit, that if beaten or treated in any such manner, that she would certainly soon find some way to escape and get married, for she had no idea of being made a nun of against her will. At hearing this, the mother was seriously frightened, for she knew the spirit of her child, and was afraid lest the girl already had a lover, and would make a great scandal over the blow. And turning it all over, she thought of an elderly lady of good family, but much reduced, who was famous for her intelligence, learning, and power of persuasion, and she thought, "This will be just the person to induce my daughter to become pious, and fill her head with devotion and make a nun of her." So she sent for this clever person, who was at once appointed the governess and constant attendant of the young lady, who, instead of quarreling with her guardian, became devoted to her. However, everything this world does not go exactly as we would have it, and no one knows what fish or crab may hide under a rock in a river. For it so happened that the governess was not a Catholic at all, as will presently appear, and did not vex her pupil with any threats of a nun's life, nor even with an approval of it. It came to pass that the young lady, who was in the habit of lying awake on moonlight nights to hear the nightingales sing, thought she heard her governess in the next room, of which the door was open, rise and go forth on the great balcony. The next night the same thing took place, and rising very softly and unseen, she beheld the lady praying, or at least kneeling in the moonlight, which seemed to her to be very singular conduct. The more so because the lady kneeling uttered words which the younger could not understand, and which certainly formed no part of the church service. And being much exercised over the strange occurrence, she at last, with timid excuses, told her governess what she had seen. Then the latter, after a little reflection, first binding her to a secrecy of life and death, for, as she declared, it was a matter of great peril, spoke as follows. "I, like thee, was instructed when young by priests to worship an invisible God. But an old woman in whom I had great confidence once said to me, 'Why worship a deity whom you cannot see, when there is the moon in all her splendor visible? Worship her. Invoke Diana, the goddess of the moon, and she will grant your prayers. This shalt thou do, obeying the Vangelo, the gospel of the witches and of Diana, who is queen of the fairies and of the moon.' Now the young lady, being persuaded, was converted to the worship of Diana and the moon, and having prayed with all her heart for a lover, having learned the conjuration to the goddess, was soon rewarded by the attention and devotion of a brave and wealthy cavalier, who was indeed as admirable a suitor as anyone could desire. But the mother, who was far more bent on gratifying vindictiveness and cruel vanity than on her daughter's happiness, was infuriated at this, and when the gentleman came to her, she bade him begone, for her daughter was vowed to become a nun, and a nun she should be or die. Then the young lady was shut up in a cell in a tower, without even the company of her governess, and put to strong and hard pain, being made to sleep on the stone floor, and would have died of hunger had her mother had her way. Then in this dire need she prayed to Diana to set her free, when lo, she found the prison door unfastened, and easily escaped. Then, having obtained a pilgrim's dress, she traveled far and wide, teaching and preaching the religion of old times, the religion of Diana, the queen of the fairies and of the moon, the goddess of the poor and the oppressed. And the fame of her wisdom and beauty went forth over all the land, and people worshipped her, calling her La Bella Pellegrina. At last her mother, hearing of her, was in a greater rage than ever, and, in fine, after much trouble, succeeded in having her again arrested and cast into prison. And then in evil temper indeed she asked her whether she would become a nun, to which she replied that it was not possible, because she had left the Catholic Church and become a worshipper of Diana and of the moon. And the end of it was that the mother, regarding her daughter as lost, gave her up to the priests to be put to torture and death, as they did all who would not agree with them or who left their religion. But the people were not well pleased with this, because they adored her beauty and goodness, and there were few who had not enjoyed her charity. But by the aid of her lover she obtained, as a last grace, that on the night before she was to be tortured and executed she might, with a guard, go forth into the garden of the palace and pray. This she did, and standing by the door of the house, which is still there, prayed in the light of the full moon to Diana, that she might be delivered from the dire persecution to which she had been subjected, since even her own parents had willingly given her over to an awful death. Now her parents and the priests, and all who sought her death, were in the palace watching lest she should escape. When lo, in answer to her prayer there came a terrible tempest and overwhelming wind, a storm such as man had never seen before, which overthrew and swept away the palace with all who were in it. There was not one stone left upon another, nor one soul alive of all who were there. The gods had replied to the prayer. The young lady escaped happily with her lover, wedded him, and the house of the peasant where the lady stood is still called La Casa al Vento, or the House of the Wind. The following story, which appeared originally in the Legends of Florence collected from the people by me, does not properly belong to the witch's gospel, as it is not strictly in accordance with it, and yet it could not well be omitted, since it is on the same subject. In it Diana appears simply as the lunar goddess of chastity, therefore not as a witch. It was given to me as Fauna, but my informant said that it might be Tana, she was not sure. As Tana occurs in another tale, and as the subject is certainly Diana, there can hardly be a question of this. Tana, la di della Luna. Tana was a very beautiful girl, but extremely poor, and as modest and pure as she was beautiful and humble. She went from one contadino to another, or from farm to work, and thus led an honest life. There was a young boor, a very ugly, bestial, and brutish fellow, who was after his fashion raging with love for her, but she could not so much as bear to look at him, and repelled all his advances. But late one night, when she was returning alone from the farmhouse where she had worked to her home, this man, who had hidden himself in a thicket, leaped out on her and cried, "Non mi es fuggerai, Sarah mia? Thou canst not flee, mine thou shalt be." And seeing no help near, and only the full moon looking down on her from heaven, Tana in despair cast herself on her knees and cried to it, "I have no one on earth to defend me. Thou alone dost see me in this strait. Therefore I pray to thee, O moon. As thou art beautiful so thou art bright, flashing thy splendor over all mankind. Even so I pray thee light up the mind of this poor ruffian, who would wrong me here. Even to the worst, cast light into his soul, that he may let me be in peace, and then return in all thy light unto my home." When she had said this, there appeared before her a bright but shadowy form, uno ombra bianca, which said, "Rise and go to thy home. Thou hast well deserved this grace. No one shall trouble thee more. Purest of all on earth, thou shalt a goddess be, the goddess of the moon, of all enchantment queen." Thus it came to pass that Tana became the dea, or spirit of the moon. There was in Florence in the oldest time a noble family, but grown so poor that their giorni di festa, or feast days, were few and far between. However, they dwelt in their old palace, which was in the street now called La Via Cittadella, which was a fine old building, and so they kept up a brave show before the world, when many a day they hardly had anything to eat. Round this palace was a large garden, in which stood an ancient marble statue of Diana, like a beautiful woman who seemed to be running with a dog by her side. She held in her hand a bow, and on her forehead was a small moon. And it was said that by night, when all was still, the statue became like life and fled, and did not return till the moon set or the sun rose. The father of the family had 2 children, who were good and intelligent. One day they came home with many flowers which had been given to them, and the little girl said to her brother, "The beautiful lady with the bow ought to have some of these." Saying this, they laid flowers before the statue and made a wreath which the boy placed on her head. Just then the great poet and magician Virgil, who knew everything about the gods and fairies, entered the garden and said, smiling, "You have made the offering of flowers to the goddess quite correctly, as they did of old. All that remains is to pronounce the prayer properly, and it is this. So he repeated the invocation to Diana. Bella di dell'arco. Bella di del frexi. Della caccia dei cani. Tu vegli cal stel. Quando il sol va dormir. Tu cala luna in front. Caci la not meglio del di. Cal tu nymph al suona. Di trom se la regina. Dei caxiatori, regina del not. Tu ci se la caxiatris. Più potent diogni. Caxiator ti prego. Pensa un poco a noi. To Diana. Lovely goddess of the bow. Lovely goddess of the arrows. Of all hounds and of all hunting. Thou who wakest in starry heaven. When the sun is sunk in slumber. Thou with moon upon thy forehead. Who the chase by night preferest. Unto hunting in the daylight. With thy nymphs unto the music. Of the horn, thyself the huntress. And most powerful, I pray thee. Think, although but for an instant. Upon us who pray unto thee. Then Virgil taught them also the Conjuration, or spell to be uttered when good fortune or aught is specially required. The Conjuration of Diana. Bella di dell'arco del cielo. Del stel e della luna. La regina più potent. Del caxiatori e della not. E ti ricorriamo. E ci diamo il tuo aiuto. Ci tu possa darsi. Sempre la buona fortuna. Fair goddess of the rainbow. Of the stars and of the moon. The queen most powerful. Of hunters and the night. We beg of thee thy aid. That thou mayst give to us. The best of fortune ever. Then he added the conclusion. Si la nostra Conjuration. Iscolterai. E buona fortuna si deri. Unsegnala noi lo deri. If thou heedst our evocation. And wilt give good fortune to us. Then in proof give us a token. And having taught them this, Virgil departed. Then the children ran to tell their parents all that had happened, and the latter impressed it on them to keep it a secret, nor breathe a word or hint thereof to anyone. But what was their amazement when they found early the next morning before the statue a deer freshly killed, which gave them good dinners for many a day. Nor did they want thereafter at any time game of all kinds, when the prayer had been devoutly pronounced. There was a neighbor of this family, a priest, who held in hate all the ways and worship of the gods of the old time, and whatever did not belong to his religion, and he, passing the garden one day, beheld the statue of Diana crowned with roses and other flowers. And being in a rage and seeing in the street a decayed cabbage, he rolled it in the mud, and threw it all dripping at the face of the goddess, saying, Ecco mala bestia d'idoli. Questo è il maggio ci io ti do. Gia ci il diavolo ti aiuta. Behold, thou vile beast of idolatry. This is the worship which thou hast from me. And the devil do the rest for thee. Then the priest heard a voice in the gloom where the leaves were dense, and it said, Beni beni, tu mi hai fat. Elefrando tu avrai. La tua porzione. Della mia caxia, espeta. It is well, I give thee warning. Since thou hast made thy offering. Some of the game to thee I'll bring. Thou'lt have thy share in the morning. All that night the priest suffered from horrible dreams and dread, and when at last, just before 3 o'clock, he fell asleep, he suddenly awoke from a nightmare in which it seemed as if something heavy rested on his chest. And something indeed fell from him and rolled on the floor. And when he rose and picked it up and looked at it by the light of the moon, he saw that it was a human head, half decayed. Another priest, who had heard his cry of terror, entered his room, and having looked at the head, said, I know that face. It is of a man whom I confessed, and who was beheaded 3 months ago at Siena. And 3 days after the priest, who had insulted the goddess, died. The following tale was not given to me as connected with the gospel of the witches, but as Diana appears in it, and as the whole conception is that of Diana and Apollo in another form, I include it in the series. Many centuries ago there was a folletto, goblin or spirit or devil angel. Kaisa, who knows what. And Mercurio, who was the god of speed and of quickness, being much pleased with this imp, bestowed on him the gift of running like the wind, with the privilege that whatever he pursued, be it spirit, a human being, or animal, he should certainly overtake or catch it. This folletto had a beautiful sister, who, like him, ran errands not for the gods, but for the goddess. There was a female god for every male, even down to the small spirits. And Diana on the same day gave to this fairy the power that, whoever might chase her, she should, if pursued, never be overtaken. One day the brother saw his sister speeding like a flash of lightning across the heaven, and he felt a sudden strange desire in rivalry to overtake her. So he dashed after as she flitted on, but though it was his destiny to catch, she had been fated never to be caught, and so the will of one supreme god was balanced by that of another. So the two kept flying round and round the edge of heaven, and at first all the gods roared with laughter. But when they understood the case, they grew serious, and asked one another how it was to end. Then the great Father God said, "Behold the earth which is in darkness and gloom. I will change the sister into a moon, and her brother into a sun. And so shall she ever escape him, yet will he ever catch her with his light, which shall fall on her from afar. For the rays of the sun are his hands, which reach forth with burning grasp, yet which are ever eluded. And thus it is said that this race begins anew with the first of every month, when the moon being cold, is covered with as many coats as an onion. But while the race is being run, as the moon becomes warm, she casts off one garment after another, till she is naked and then stops, and then, when dressed, the race begins again." The following very curious tale, with the incantation, was not in the text of the Vangelo, but it very evidently belongs to the cycle or series of legends connected with it. Diana is declared to be the protectress of all outcasts, those to whom the night is their day, consequently of thieves, and Laverna, as we may learn from Horace Epistles 16:1 and Plautus, was preeminently the patroness of pilfering and all rascality. In this story she also appears as a witch and humorist. It was given to me as a tradition of Virgil, who often appears as one familiar with the marvelous and hidden lore of the olden time. It happened on a time that Virgil, who knew all things hidden or magical, he who was a magician and poet, having heard a speech, or oration, by a famous talker who had not much in him, was asked what he thought of it. And he replied, "It seems to me to be impossible to tell whether it was all introduction or all conclusion. Certainly there was no body in it. It was like certain fish of whom one is in doubt whether they are all head or all tail, or only head and tail. Or the goddess Laverna, of whom no one ever knew whether she was all head or all body, or neither or both." Then the emperor inquired who this deity might be, for he had never heard of her. And Virgil replied, "Among the gods or spirits who were of ancient times, may they be ever favorable to us. Among them was one female who was the craftiest and most knavish of them all. She was called Laverna. She was a thief, and very little known to the other deities, who were honest and dignified, for she was rarely in heaven or in the country of the fairies. She was almost always on earth. Among thieves, pickpockets, and panders, she lived in darkness. Once it happened that she went to a mortal, a great priest in the form and guise of a very beautiful stately priestess of some goddess, and said to him, 'You have an estate which I wish to buy. I intend to build on it a temple to our God. I swear to you on my body that I will pay thee within a year.' Therefore the priest transferred to her the estate. And very soon Laverna had sold off all the crops, grain, cattle, wood, and poultry. There was not left the value of 4 farthings. But on the day fixed for payment there was no Laverna to be seen. The goddess was far away, and had left her creditor in the lurch. At the same time, Laverna went to a great lord and bought of him a castle, well furnished within and broad rich lands without. But this time she swore on her head to pay in full in 6 months. And as she had done by the priest, so she acted to the lord of the castle, and stole and sold every stick, furniture, cattle, men, and mice. There was not left wherewith to feed a fly. Then the priest and the lord, finding out who this was, appealed to the gods, complaining that they had been robbed by a goddess. And it was soon made known to them all that this was Laverna. Therefore she was called to judgment before all the gods. And when she was asked what she had done with the property of the priest, unto whom she had sworn by her body to make payment at the time appointed, and why had she broken her oath? She replied by a strange deed which amazed them all, for she made her body disappear, so that only her head remained visible, and it cried, "Behold me, I swore by my body, but body have I none." Then all the gods laughed. After the priest came the lord who had also been tricked, and to whom she had sworn by her head. And in reply to him, Laverna showed to all present her whole body without mincing matters, and it was one of extreme beauty, but without a head. And from the neck thereof came a voice which said, Behold me, for I am Laverna who have come to answer to that lord's complaint, who swears that I contracted debt to him, and have not paid, although the time is o'er, and that I am a thief because I swore. Upon my head, but as you all can see, I have no head at all, and therefore I assuredly ne'er swore by such an oath. Then there was indeed a storm of laughter among the gods, who made the matter right by ordering the head to join the body, and bidding Laverna pay up her debts, which she did. Then Jove spoke and said, Here is a roguish goddess without a duty, or a worshipper. While there are in Rome innumerable thieves, sharpers, cheats, and rascals, ladri, bindolani, truffatori e scraconi, who live by deceit. These good folk have neither a church nor a god, and it is a great pity, for even the very devils have their master, Satan, as the head of the family. Therefore, I command that in future Laverna shall be the goddess of all the knaves or dishonest tradesmen, with the whole rubbish and refuse of the human race, who have been hitherto without a god or a devil, inasmuch as they have been too despicable for the one or the other. And so Laverna became the goddess of all dishonest and shabby people. Whenever anyone planned or intended any knavery or aught wicked, he entered her temple and invoked Laverna, who appeared to him as a woman's head. But if he did his work of knavery badly or maladroitly, when he again invoked her he saw only the body. But if he was clever, then he beheld the whole goddess, head and body. Laverna was no more chaste than she was honest, and had many lovers and many children. It was said that not being bad at heart or cruel, she often repented her life and sins, but do what she might, she could not reform because her passions were so inveterate. And if a man had got any woman with child or any maid found herself enceinte, and would hide it from the world and escape scandal, they would go every day to invoke Laverna. Then when the time came for the suppliant to be delivered, Laverna would bear her in sleep during the night to her temple, and after the birth cast her into slumber again, and bear her back to her bed at home. And when she awoke in the morning, she was ever in vigorous health and felt no weariness, and all seemed to her as a dream. But to those who desired in time to reclaim their children, Laverna was indulgent if they led such lives as pleased her, and faithfully worshipped her. And this is the ceremony to be performed, and the incantation to be offered every night to Laverna. There must be a set place devoted to the goddess, be it a room, a cellar, or a grove, but ever a solitary place. Then take a small table of the size of 40 playing cards set close together, and this must be hid in the same place, and going there at night. Take 40 cards, and spread them on the table, making of them a close carpet or cover on it. Take of the herbs pora and concordia, and boil the two together, repeating meanwhile the following. Scongiurazione. Fa balir la mano della concordia. Per tenere mi concordo. La Laverna ci passa portermi. Il mio figlio e ci passa. Guardar mel de qualun pericolo. Ballo questa erba, man non ballo l'erba. Ballo la pora ci passa tener lontano. Qualunque persona e si levine. L'idea a qualcuno di avvicinarsi. Passa esser preso de pora. E fugger lontano. Incantation. I boil the cluster of concordia. To keep in concord and at peace with me. Laverna, that she may restore to me my child, and that she by her favoring care may guard me well from danger all my life. I boil this herb, yet 'tis not it which boils. I boil the fear, that it may keep afar any intruder, and if such should come to spy upon my right, may he be struck with fear, and in his terror haste away. Having said thus, put the boiled herbs in a bottle, and spread the cards on the table one by one, saying, Battezo quest quaranta cart. Manon battezo la quaranta cart. Battezo quaranta de superi. Alla di Laverna ci lassù. Person divingono un vulcano. Fino ci la Laverna non sera. Venuta de mi, calla mia creatura. E questi de dal naso dalla bocca. E dal orecchio piscino butter. Fiami di fuoco e senar. E lasarpace e beni alla di. Laverna ci passa ancessa. Abrasar isu fighai. A sua volente. Incantation. I spread before me, now the 40 cards. Yet 'tis not 40 cards which here I spread, but 40 of the gods superior to the deity Laverna, that their forms may each and all become volcanoes hot, until Laverna comes and brings my child, and till 'tis done may they all cast at her hot flames of fire, and with them glowing coals, from noses, mouths, and ears, until she yields. Then may they leave Laverna to her peace, free to embrace her children at her will. So long ago as the year 1886, I learned that there was in existence a manuscript setting forth the doctrines of Italian witchcraft, and I was promised that, if possible, it should be obtained for me. In this, I was for a time disappointed. But having urged it on Madonna, my collector of folklore, while she was leading a wandering life in Tuscany, to make an effort to obtain or recover something of the kind, I at last received from her, on January 1, 1897, entitled Aradia, or the Gospel of the Witches. Now be it observed that every leading point which forms the plot or center of the Vangel, such as that Diana is queen of the witches, an associate of Herodias, Aradia, in her relations to sorcery, that she bore a child to her brother the sun, here Lucifer, that as a moon goddess she is in some relation to Cain, who dwells as prisoner in the moon, and that the witches of old were people oppressed by feudal lands, the former revenging themselves in every way, and holding orgies to Diana which the church represented as being the worship of Satan. All of this, I repeat, had been told or written out for me in fragments by Madonna, not to speak of other authorities, even as it had been chronicled by Horst or Michelet. Therefore all this is in the present document of minor importance. All of this I expected, but what I did not expect, and what was new to me, was that portion which is given as prose poetry and which I have rendered in meter or verse. This being traditional, and taken down from wizards, is extremely curious and interesting, since in it are preserved many relics of lore which, as may be verified from records, have come down from days of yore. Aradia is evidently enough Herodias, who was regarded in the beginning as associated with Diana as chief of the witches. This was not, as I opine, derived from the Herodias of the New Testament, but from an earlier replica of Lilith, bearing the same name. It is, in fact, an identification or twinning of the Aryan and Shemitic queens of heaven, or of night and of sorcery, and it may be that this was known to the earliest myth-makers. So far back as the 6th century, the worship of Herodias and Diana by witches was condemned by a church council at Ancyra. Pipernus and other writers have noted the evident identity of Herodias with Lilith. Isis preceded both. Diana is very vigorously, even dramatically, set forth in this poem as the goddess of the godforsaken and ungodly, of thieves, harlots, and truthfully enough of the minions of the moon, as Falstaff would have fain had them called. It was recognized in ancient Rome, as it is in modern India, that no human being can be so bad or vile as to have forfeited all right to divine protection of some kind or other, and Diana was this protectress. It may be as well to observe here that among all free-thinking philosophers, educated pariahs, and literary or book bohemians, there has ever been a most unorthodox tendency to believe that the faults and errors of humanity are more due, if not altogether due, to unavoidable causes which we cannot help. As, for instance, heredity, the being born savages, or poor, or in vice, or unto bigotry and virtue in excess, or unto inquisitioning. That is to say, when we are so overburdened with innately born sin that all our free will cannot set us free from it. It was during the so-called Dark Ages, or from the downfall of the Roman Empire until the 13th century, that the belief that all which was worst in man owed its origin solely to the monstrous abuses and tyranny of church and state. For then, at every turn in life, the vast majority encountered downright shameless, palpable iniquity and injustice, with no law for the weak who were without patrons. The perception of this drove vast numbers of the discontented into rebellion, and as they could not prevail by open warfare, they took their hatred out in a form of secret anarchy, which was, however, intimately blended with superstition and fragments of old tradition. Prominent in this, and naturally enough, was the worship of Diana the Protectress, for the alleged adoration of Satan was a far later invention of the Church, and it has never really found a leading place in Italian witchcraft to this day. That is to say, purely diabolical witchcraft did not find general acceptance till the end of the 15th century, when it was, one may almost say, invented in Rome to supply means wherewith to destroy the threatening heresy of Germany. The growth of sentiment is the increase of suffering. Man is never entirely miserable until he finds out how wronged he is and fancies that he sees far ahead a possible freedom. In ancient times, men as slaves suffered less under even more abuse because they believed they were born to low conditions of life. Even the best reform brings pain with it, and the great awakening of man was accompanied with griefs, many of which even yet endure. Pessimism is the result of too much culture and introversion. It appears to be strangely out of sight and out of mind with all historians that the sufferings of the vast majority of mankind, or the enslaved and poor, were far greater under early Christianity, or till the end of the Middle Ages and the emancipation of serfs, than they were before. The reason for this was that in the old heathen time, the humble did not know, or even dream, that all are equal before God, or that they had many rights, even here on earth, as slaves. For in fact, the whole moral tendency of the New Testament is utterly opposed to slavery, or even severe servitude. Every word uttered teaching Christ's mercy and love, humility and charity, was in fact a bitter reproof not only to every lord in the land, but to the church itself and its arrogant prelates. The fact that many abuses had been mitigated and that there were benevolent saints does not affect the fact that, on the whole, mankind was for a long time worse off than before. And the greatest cause of this suffering was what may be called a sentimental one, or a newly born consciousness of rights withheld, which is always of itself a torture. And this was greatly aggravated by the endless preaching to the people that it was a duty to suffer and endure oppression and tyranny, and that the rights of authority of all kinds were so great that they on the whole even excused their worst abuses. For by upholding authority in the nobility, the church maintained its own. The result of it all was a vast development of rebels, outcasts, and all the discontented, who adopted witchcraft or sorcery for a religion, and wizards as their priests. They had secret meetings in desert places, among old ruins accursed by priests as the haunt of evil spirits or ancient heathen gods, or in the mountains. To this day, the dweller in Italy may often find secluded spots environed by ancient chestnut forests, rocks, and walls, which suggest fit places for the Sabbat, and are sometimes still believed by tradition to be such. And I also believe that in this Gospel of the Witches, we have a trustworthy outline at least of the doctrine and rites observed at these meetings. They adored forbidden deities and practiced forbidden deeds, inspired as much by rebellion against society as by their own passions. There is, however, in the Evangel of the Witches, an effort made to distinguish between the naturally wicked or corrupt and those who are outcasts or oppressed, as appears from the passage. Yet like Cain's daughter, offspring, thou shalt never be, nor like the race who have become at last, wicked and infamous from suffering, as are the Jews and wandering Zingari, who are all thieves, like them ye shall not be. The supper of the witches, the cakes of meal, salt, and honey in the form of crescent moons, are known to every classical scholar. The moon or horn-shaped cakes are still common. I have eaten of them this very day, and though they are known all over the world, I believe they owe their fashion to tradition. In the Conjuration of the meal, there is a very curious tradition introduced to the effect that the spige or glittering grains of wheat from which spikes shoot like sun rays owe their brilliant likeness to a resemblance to the firefly, who comes to give them light. We have, I doubt not, in this a classic tradition, but I cannot verify it. Hereupon the Vangelo cites a common nursery rhyme, which may also be found in a nursery tale, yet which, like others, is derived from witch lore, by which the luciola is put under a glass and conjured to give by its light certain answers. The conjuration of the meal or bread, as being literally our body as contributing to form it, and deeply sacred because it had lain in the earth, where dark and wondrous secrets bide, seems to cast a new light on the Christian sacrament. It is a type of resurrection from the earth, and was therefore used at the mysteries and Holy Supper, and the grain had pertained to chthonic secrets, or to what had been under the earth in darkness. Thus even earthworms are invoked in modern witchcraft as familiar with dark mysteries, and the shepherd's pipe to win the Orphic power must be buried 3 days in the earth. And so all was, and is, in sorcery a kind of wild poetry based on symbols, all blending into one another, light and darkness, fireflies and grain, life and death. Very strange indeed, but very strictly according to ancient magic as described by classic authorities, is the threatening Diana in case she will not grant a prayer. This recurs continually in the witch exorcisms or spells. The magus or witch worships the spirit, but claims to have the right, drawn from a higher power, to compel even the queen of earth, heaven, and hell to grant the request. Give me what I ask, and thou shalt have honor and offerings. Refuse, and I will vex thee by insult. So Canidia and her kind boasted that they could compel the gods to appear. This is all classic. No one ever heard of a satanic witch invoking or threatening the Trinity, or Christ, or even the angels or saints. In fact, they cannot even compel the devil or his imps to obey. They work entirely by his goodwill as slaves. But in the old Italian lore, the sorcerer or witch is all or nothing, and aims at limitless will or power. Of the ancient belief in the virtues of a perforated stone, I need not speak. But it is to be remarked that in the invocation the witch goes forth in the earliest morning to seek for verbena or vervain. The ancient Persian magi, or rather their daughters, worshipped the sun as it rose by waving freshly plucked verbena, which was one of the 7 most powerful plants in magic. These Persian priestesses were naked while they thus worshipped, nudity being a symbol of truth and sincerity. The extinguishing the lights, nakedness, and the orgy were regarded as symbolical of the body being laid in the ground, the grain being planted, or of entering into darkness and death, to be revived in new forms or regeneration and light. It was the laying aside of daily life. The Gospel of the Witches, as I have given it, is in reality only the initial chapter of the collection of ceremonies, cantrips, incantations, and traditions current in the fraternity or sisterhood, the whole of which are in the main to be found in my Etruscan Roman remains and Florentine legends. I have, it is true, a great number as yet unpublished, and there are more ungathered, but the whole scripture of this sorcery, all its principal tenets, formulas, medicaments, and mysteries may be found in what I have collected and printed. Yet I would urge that it would be worthwhile to arrange and edit it all into one work, because it would be to every student of archaeology, folklore, or history of great value. It has been the faith of millions in the past. It has made itself felt in innumerable traditions, which deserve to be better understood than they are, and I would gladly undertake the work if I believed that the public would make it worth the publisher's outlay and pains. It may be observed with truth that I have not treated this gospel, nor even the subject of witchcraft, entirely as folklore, as the word is strictly defined and carried out. That is, as a mere traditional fact or thing to be chiefly regarded as a variant like or unlike sundry other traditions, or to be tabulated and put away in pigeonholes for reference. That it is useful and sensible to do all this is perfectly true, and it has led to an immense amount of valuable search, collection, and preservation. But there is this to be said, and I have observed that here and there a few genial minds are beginning to awake to it, that the mere study of the letter in this way has developed a great indifference to the spirit, going in many cases so far as to produce, like realism in art, to which it is allied, even a contempt for the matter or meaning of it, as originally believed in. I was lately much struck by the fact that in a very learned work on music, the author, in discussing that of ancient times and of the East, while extremely accurate and minute in determining pentatonic and all other scales, and what may be called the mere machinery and history of composition, showed that he was utterly ignorant of the fundamental fact that notes and chords, bars and melodies were in themselves ideas or thoughts. Thus Confucius is said to have composed a melody which was a personal description of himself. Now, if this be not understood, we cannot understand the soul of early music, and the folklorist who cannot get beyond the letter and fancies himself scientific is exactly like the musician who has no idea of how or why melodies were anciently composed. The strange and mystical chapter, How Diana Made the Stars and the Rain, is the same given in my Legends of Florence, Vol. Roman 2. p. 229, but much enlarged or developed to a cosmogonic mythologic sketch. And here a reflection occurs which is perhaps the most remarkable which all this witch evangel suggests. In all other scriptures of all races, it is the male, Jehovah, Buddha, or Brahma, who creates the universe. In witch sorcery it is the female who is the primitive principle. Whenever in history there is a period of radical intellectual rebellion against long-established conservatism, hierarchy, and the like, there is always an effort to regard woman as the fully equal, which means the superior sex. Thus, in the extraordinary war of conflicting elements, strange schools of sorcery, Neoplatonism, Kabbalah, heretic Christianity, Gnosticism, Persian magism, and dualism, with the remains of Old Greek and Egyptian theologies in the 3rd and 4th centuries at Alexandria, and in the House of Light of Cairo in the 9th, the equality of woman was a prominent doctrine. It was Sophia or Helena, the enfranchised, who was then the true Christ who was to save mankind. When illumination or Illuminaism, in company with magic and mysticism, and a resolve to regenerate society according to extreme free thought, inspired the Templars to the hope that they would master the Church and the world, the equality of woman, derived from the Cairene traditions, again received attention. And it may be observed that during the Middle Ages, and even so late as the intense excitements which inspired the French Huguenots, the Jansenists, and the Anabaptists, woman always came forth more prominently or played a far greater part than she had done in social or political life. This was also the case in the spiritualism founded by the Fox Sisters of Rochester, New York, and it is manifesting itself in many ways in the fin de cycle, which is also a nervous chaos according to Nordau, woman being evidently a fish who shows herself most when the waters are troubled. O woman, in our hours of ease. The reader will remember the rest, but we should also remember that in the earlier ages the vast majority of mankind itself, suppressed by the too great or greatly abused power of church and state, only manifested itself at such periods of rebellion against forms or ideas grown old. And with every new rebellion, every fresh outburst or debacle or wild inundation and bursting over the barriers, humanity and woman gain something, that is to say, their just dues or rights. For as every freshet spreads more widely its waters over the fields, which are in due time the more fertilized thereby, so the world at large gains by every revolution, however terrible or repugnant it may be for a time. The emancipated or woman's rights woman, when too enthusiastic, generally considers man as limited, while woman is destined to gain on him. In earlier ages a contrary opinion prevailed, and both are, or were, apparently in the wrong, so far as the future is concerned. For in truth both sexes are progressive, and progress in this respect means not a conflict of the male and female principle, such as formed the basis of the Mahabharata, but a gradual ascertaining of true ability and adjustment of relations or coordination of powers, in doing which on a scientific basis all conflict ceases. These remarks are appropriate to my text and subject, because it is in studying the epics when woman has made herself prominent and influential that we learn what the capacities of the female sex truly are. Among these, that of witchcraft as it truly was, not as it is generally quite misunderstood, is as deeply interesting as any other. For the witch, laying aside all question as to magic or its non-existence, was once a real factor or great power in rebellious social life, and to this very day, as most novels bear witness, it is recognized that there is something uncanny, mysterious, and incomprehensible in woman, which neither she herself nor man can explain. For every woman is at heart a witch. We have banished the broom and the cat and the working miracles, the Sabbat and pacts with Satan, but the mystery or puzzle is as great as ever. No one living knows to what it is destined to lead. Are not the charms of love of every kind, and the enjoyment of beauty in all its forms in nature, mysteries, miracles, or magical? To all who are interested in this subject of woman's influence and capacity, this Evangel of the Witches will be of value as showing that there have been strange thinkers who regarded creation as a feminine development or parthenogenesis from which the masculine principle was born. Lucifer, or light, lay hidden in the darkness of Diana, as heat is hidden in ice. But the regenerator or messiah of this strange doctrine is a woman Aradia, though the two, mother and daughter, are confused or reflected in the different tales, even as Jahve is confused with the Elohim. Remains to be said that the Adam Nabal and Evil, or Adamite assemblages enjoined in the Gospel of Sorcery, are not much, if at all, kept up by the now few and far between old or young witches and venerable wizards of the present day. That is to say, not to my knowledge in central or northern Italy, but among the roués, viveurs, and fast women of Florence and Milan, where they are not quite as rare as eclipses, Such assemblies are called balli angelici, or angels' balls. They are indeed far from being unknown in any of the great cities of the world. A few years ago, a Sunday newspaper in an American city published a detailed account of them in the dance houses of the town, declaring that they were a very frequent occurrence, which was further verified to me by men familiar with them. A very important point to all who regard the finds or discoveries of ancient tradition as of importance is that a deep and extensive study of the Italian witch traditions which I have collected, a comparison of them one with the other, and of the whole with what resembles it in the writings of Ovid and other mythologists, force the conviction, which I have often expressed, but not too frequently, that there are in these later records many very valuable and curious remains of ancient Latin or Etruscan lore, in all probability entire poems, tales, and invocations which have passed over from the ancient tongue. If this be true, and when it shall come to pass that scholars will read with interest what is here given, then most assuredly there will be critical examination and verification of what is ancient in it, and it will be discovered what marvels of tradition still endure. That the witches even yet form a fragmentary secret society or sect, that they call it that of the old religion, and that there are in the Romagna entire villages in which the people are completely heathen, and almost entirely governed by sedimoni or 7 months' children, may be read in the novel of the name, as well as several papers published in divers magazines or accepted from my own personal knowledge. The existence of a religion supposes a scripture, and in this case it may be admitted, almost without severe verification, that the Evangel of the Witches is really a very old work. Thus it is often evident that where a tradition has been taken down from verbal delivery, the old woman repeats words or sentences by whole chapters which she does not fully understand, but has heard and learned. These are to be verified by correlation or comparison with other tales and texts. Now considering all this most carefully and critically, or severely yet impartially, no one can resist the conviction that in the Gospel of the Witches we have a book which is in all probability the translation of some early or later Latin work, since it seems most probable that every fixed faith finds its record. There are literary men among the pariahs of India. There were probably many among the minions of the moon, or nocturnal worshippers of Diana. In fact, I am not without hope that research may yet reveal in the writings of some long-forgotten heretic or mystic of the dark ages the parallel of many passages in this text, if not the whole of it. Yet a few years, reader, and all this will have vanished from among the Italians before the newspaper and railroad, even as a light cloud is driven before a gale, or pass away like snowflakes in a pond. Old traditions are, in fact, disappearing with such incredible rapidity that I am assured on best authority, and can indeed see for myself that what I collected or had recorded for me 10 years ago in the Romagna Toscana, with exceptionably skillful aid, could not now be gathered at all by anybody, since it no longer exists, save in the memories of a few old sorcerers who are daily disappearing, leaving no trace behind. It is going, it is all but gone. In fact, I often think that, old as I am, and I am 12 years beyond the limit of extreme old age as defined by the Duke of Marlborough in his defense, I shall yet live to hear the rap of the auctioneer time as he bids off the last real Latin sorcerer to death. It may be that he is passing in his checks even as I write. The women or witches, having more vitality, will last a little longer. I mean the traditional kind, for as regards innate natural development of witchcraft and pure custom, we shall always have with us sorceresses, even as we shall have the poor, until we all go up together. What is very remarkable, even to the being difficult to understand, is the fact that so much antique tradition survived with so little change among the peasantry. But legends and spells in families of hereditary witches are far more likely to live than fashions in art, yet even the latter have been kept since 2,000 years. Thus, as E. Neville Rolfe writes, the late Signor Castellani, who was the first to reproduce with fidelity the jewelry found in the tombs of Etruria and Greece, made up his mind that some survival of this ancient and exquisite trade must still exist somewhere in Italy. He accordingly made diligent search, and in an out-of-the-way village discovered goldsmiths who made ornaments for the peasants, which in their character indicated a strong survival of early Etruscan art. And here I would remark that where I have written perhaps a little too bitterly of the indifference of scholars to the curious traditions preserved by wizards and witches, I refer to Rome, and especially to northern Italy. G. Petre did all that was possible for one man as regards the South. Since the foregoing chapters were written, I received Naples in the 90s, by E. Neville Rolfe, B.A., in which a deep and intelligent interest in the subject is well supported by extensive knowledge. What will be to the reader of my book particularly interesting is the amount of information which Mr. Rolfe gives regarding the connection of Diana with witchcraft, and how many of her attributes became those of the Madonna. The worship of Diana, as he says, prevailed very extensively. So much so that when Christianity superseded paganism, much of the heathen symbolism was adapted to the new rites, and the transition from the worship of Diana to that of the Madonna was made comparatively simple. Mr. Rolfe speaks of the key, rue, and verbena as symbols of Diana. Of all of these I have incantations, apparently very ancient, and identified with Diana. I have often found rue in houses in Florence, and had it given to me as a special favor. It is always concealed in some dark corner, because to take any away is to take luck. The bronze frog was an emblem of Diana, hence the Latin proverb, "He who loves a frog regards it as Diana." It was made till recent times as an amulet. I have one as a paperweight now before me. There is also an incantation to the frog. That wherein Mr. Rolfe tacitly and unconsciously confirms what I have written, and what is most remarkable in this my own work, is that the wizards in Italy form a distinct class, still exercising great power in Naples and Sicily, and even possessing very curious magical documents and Kabbalistic charts, one of which, familiar to those who have seen it among the Takrari and Arab sorcerers in Cairo, in their books, he gives. These probably are derived from Malta. Therefore, it will not seem astonishing to the reader that this Gospel of the Witches should have been preserved, even as I have given it. That I have not had or seen it in an old MS is certainly true, but that it has been written of yore, and is still repeated here and there orally, in separate parts, I am sure. It would be a great gratification to me if any among those into whose hands this book may fall, who may possess information confirming what is here set forth, would kindly either communicate it or publish it in some form, so that it may not be lost. All things were made by Diana, the great spirits of the stars, men in their time and place, the giants which were of old, and the dwarfs who dwell in the rocks, and once a month worship her with cakes. There was once a young man who was poor, without parents, yet was he good. One night he sat in a lonely place, yet it was very beautiful, and there he saw 1,000 little fairies, shining white, dancing in the light of the full moon. "Gladly would I be like you, O fairies," said the youth, "free from care, needing no food. But what are ye?" "We are moon rays, the children of Diana," replied one. "We are children of the moon. We are born of shining light. When the moon shoots forth a ray, then it takes a fairy's form. And thou art one of us because thou wert born when the moon, our mother Diana, was full. Yes, our brother, kin to us, belonging to our band. And if thou art hungry and poor, and wilt have money in thy pocket, then think upon the moon, on Diana, unto whom thou wert born. Then repeat these words. Luna mia, bella luna. Più di una altra stella. Tu sei sempre bella. Portate me la buona fortuna. Moon, moon, beautiful moon. Fairer far than any star. Moon, O moon, if it may be. Bring good fortune unto me. And then, if thou hast money in thy pocket, thou wilt have it doubled. For the children who are born in a full moon are sons or daughters of the moon, especially when they are born of a Sunday, when there is a high tide. Alta Maria, luna piena sai. Grand uomo sicuro tu seri. Full moon high sea. Great man shalt thou be. Then the young man, who had only Apollo in his purse, touched it, saying, Luna mia, bella luna. Mia sempre bella luna. Moon, moon, beautiful moon. Ever be my lovely moon. And so the young man, wishing to make money, bought and sold and made money, which he doubled every month. But it came to pass that after a time, during 1 month he could sell nothing, so made nothing. So by night he said to the moon, Luna mia, luna bella. Ci io amo più di altra stella. Dimmi perché fatata. Ci io niente ho guadagnato. Moon, O moon, whom I by far love beyond another star. Tell me why it was ordained. that I this month have nothing gained. Then there appeared to him a little shining elf, who said, Tu non devi aspettare. Altro ci eleuter. Quando fai ben lavorare. Money will not come to thee, nor any help or aid constici, unless you work industriously. Then added, Io non darò mai denaro. Mai l'aiuto mio caro. Money I ne'er give, 'tis clear. Only help to thee, my dear. Then the youth understood that the moon, like God and fortune, does the most for those who do the most for themselves. Come el appetito vin mangiando. E vin il guadagno, lavorando e risparmiando. As appetite comes by eating and craving, profit results from labor and saving. To be born in a full moon means to have an enlightened mind, and a high tide signifies an exalted intellect and full of thought. It is not enough to have a fine boat of fortune. Bisogna anche lavorare. Per farla bene andare. You must also bravely row, if you wish the bark to go. Ben faremo e ben diremo. Malva la barca senza remo. Do your best or talk but more. To row the boat you'll need an oar. And, as it is said, La fortuna accaida. Accai tagli cosi sta. Qualch volta aglioziosi. Model più ai laboriosi. Fortune gives and fortune takes. And to man a fortune makes. Sometimes to those who labor shirk, but oftener to those who work. In a long and strange legend of Melambo, a Magian and great physician of divine birth, there is an invocation to Diana which has a proper place in this work. The incident in which it occurs is as follows. One day Melambo asked his mother how it was that while it had been promised that he should know the language of all living things, it had not yet come to pass. And his mother replied, Patience, my son, for it is by waiting and watching ourselves that we learn how to be taught. And thou hast within thee the teachers who can impart the most, if thou wilt seek to hear them, yes, the professors who can teach thee more in a few minutes than others learn in a life. It befell that one evening Melambo, thinking on this while playing with a nest of young serpents, which his servant had found in a hollow oak, said, I would that I could talk with you. Well, I know that ye have language. As graceful as your movement. As brilliant as your color. Then he fell asleep, and the young serpents twined in his hair and began to lick his lips and eyes, while their mother sang, Diana, Diana, Diana. Regina del Strige. E della nata scura. E di tutta la natura. Del stel e della luna. E di tutta la fortuna. Tu ci regula Maria. Ci risplendi il mare nella sera. Cala luz sol ond. La padrona sei del oceano. Cala tu barca fata. Fata mezza luna. La tua barca rilucent. Barca e luna crescent. Fai sempre velo in cielo. E in terra sulla sera. E ancha navigare. Rifletata sulla mare. Preghiamo di dare questo. Questo buon Melambo. Qualunque parler. Di qualunque animali. The invocation of the serpents, mother to Diana. Diana, Diana, Diana. Queen of all enchantresses. And of the dark night. And of all nature. Of the stars and of the moon. And of all fate or fortune. Thou who rulest the tide. Who shinest by night on the sea. Casting light upon the waters. Thou who art mistress of the ocean. In thy boat made like a crescent. Crescent moon bark brightly gleaming. Ever smiling high in heaven. Sailing too on earth, reflected. In the ocean, on its water. We implore thee give this sleeper. Give unto this good Melambo. The great gift of understanding. What all creatures say while talking. Diana hath power to do all things, to give glory to the lowly, wealth to the poor, joy to the afflicted, beauty to the ugly. Be not in grief if you are her follower. Though you be in prison and in darkness, she will bring light. Many there are whom she sinks that they may rise the higher. There was of old in Monterone a young man so ugly that when a stranger was passing through the town he was shown this gianty, for such was his name, as one of the sights of the place. Yet, hideous as he was, because he was rich, though of no family, he had confidence, and hoped boldly to win and wed some beautiful young lady of rank. Now there came to dwell in Monterone a wonderfully beautiful biondina, or blonde young lady of culture and condition, to whom Gianni, with his usual impudence, boldly made love, getting, as was also usual, a round no for his reply. But this time, being more than usually fascinated in good truth, for there were influences at work he knew not of, he became as one possessed or mad with passion, so that he hung about the lady's house by night and day, seeking indeed an opportunity to rush in and seize her, or by some desperate trick to master and bear her away. But here his plans were defeated, because the lady had ever by her a great cat which seemed to be of more than human intelligence, and, whenever Gianni approached her or her home, it always espied him and gave the alarm with a terrible noise. And there was indeed something so unearthly in its appearance, and something so awful in its great green eyes which shone like torches, that the boldest man might have been appalled by them. But one evening Gianni reflected that it was foolish to be afraid of a mere cat, which need only scare a boy, and so he boldly ventured on an attack. So going forth, he took a ladder which he carried and placed against the lady's window. But while he stood at the foot, he found by him an old woman, who earnestly began to beg him not to persevere in his intention. "For thou knowest well, Gianni," she said, "that the lady will have none of thee, thou art a terror to her. Do but go home and look in the glass, and it will seem to thee that thou art looking on mortal sin in human form." Then Gianni in a roaring rage cried, "I will have my way and my will, thou old wife of the devil, if I must kill thee and the girl too." Saying which, he rushed up the ladder. But before he had opened or could enter the window, and was at the top, he found himself as it were turned to wood or stone, unable to move. Then he was overwhelmed with shame, and said, "Ere long the whole town will be here to witness my defeat. However, I will make one last appeal." So he cried, "O vecchia, thou who didst mean me more kindly than I knew, pardon me, I beg thee, and rescue me from this trouble. And if, as I well ween, thou art a witch, and if I, by becoming a wizard, may be freed from my trials and troubles, then I pray thee teach me how it may be done, so that I may win the young lady, since I now see that she is of thy kind, and that I must be of it to be worthy of her." Then Gianni saw the old woman sweep like a flash of light from a lantern up from the ground, and, touching him, bore him away from the ladder, when lo! The light was a cat, who had been anon the witch, and she said, "Thou wilt soon set forth on a long journey, and in thy way thou wilt find a wretched worn-out horse, when thou must say, Fata Diana, Fata Diana, Fata Diana. Io Roman 6 scongiura. Di daran podi bene. Aquella povera bestia. E poi si trovera. Una grossa capra. Ma in vero capron. E tu durai. Buonasera, bel capron. E questo ti risponderà. Buonasera galantuomo. Sono tanto stanco, ci non mi sento di andar più avanti. E risponderai al solito. Fata Diana Roman 6 scongiuro. Di dar pace e bene. A questo capron. Fairy Diana, Fairy Diana, Fairy Diana. I conjure thee to do some little to this poor beast. Then thou wilt find a great goat, a true he-goat. And thou shalt say, Good evening, fair goat. And he will reply, Good evening, fair sir. I am so weary that I can go no farther. And thou shalt reply as usual, Fairy Diana, I conjure thee to give to this goat relief and peace. Then will we enter in a great hall where thou wilt see many beautiful ladies who will try to fascinate thee, but let thy answer ever be, She whom I love is her of Monterone. And now, Gianni, to horse, mount and away. So he mounted the cat, which flew as quick as thought, and found the mare, and having pronounced over it the incantation, it became a woman and said, In nome della Fata Diana. Tu passa divenair. Un giovin bello. Bianco e rosso. Di latte e sang. In the name of the fairy Diana. Mayest thou hereby become a beautiful young man, red and white in hue, like to milk and blood. After this he found the goat and conjured it in like manner, and it replied, In the name of the fairy Diana. Be thou attired more richly than a prince. So he passed to the hall, where he was wooed by beautiful ladies, but his answer to them all was that his love was at Monterone. Then he saw or knew no more, but on awaking found himself in Monterone, and so changed to a handsome youth that no one knew him. So he married his beautiful lady, and all lived the hidden life of witches and wizards from that day, and are now in fairyland.